The Great Wall of Willow Creek. It was the kind of moment you dream about when you're stuck in a cramped apartment, listening to your upstairs neighbor's late-night tap-dancing hobby, or catching whiffs of the curry experiments from next door. I, Robert Thompson, had finally done it. At 52, I held the keys to my own slice of the American dream, a modest two-story house on Willow Creek Lane, a suburban paradise where every lawn looked like it belonged in a gardening magazine. The deed bore my name. The mortgage owned my future, and the weight of that key in my pocket felt like a badge of triumph. After years of shared walls and thin ceilings, I was free. I could crank the radio, paint the walls neon green, or, God forbid, leave the blinds open while wandering around in my boxers. The point was, I could. And that, my friends, was liberty. Willow Creek Lane was the picture of suburban perfection. The grass shimmered in a shade of green that seemed engineered in a lab. Mailboxes stood in precise rows, like soldiers on parade, and the houses sported a daring palette of beige, taupe, and eggshell. It was calm, orderly, almost oppressively serene. To celebrate my new kingdom, I spent a glorious Saturday morning on a project that mattered, not fixing a squeaky door or repainting the guest room, but mounting a gleaming basketball hoop above my garage. The crisp white backboard and bright orange rim were a thing of beauty. I stood in my driveway, basketball in hand, savoring the moment. The thump-thump of the ball on concrete, the clean arc of a free throw slicing through the air, the satisfying swish as it hit the net. It was the sound of freedom, of a man who'd made it. But freedom, as I'd soon learn, came with a catch. Across the street, behind a row of hedges trimmed into perfect geometric shapes, I felt eyes on me. A woman in her late 50s, with a blonde bob that defied gravity, watched from her yard. Her expression was not neighborly. She crossed the street with the precision of a general, her khaki capris and pale blue polo shirt radiating authority. Under her arm, she carried a clipboard, a weapon of suburban warfare. My heart didn't sink yet. I was still riding the high of homeownership. "Good afternoon," she said, her voice sweet but edged with steel. "I'm Susan Harper, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association." "Hi, Susan," I said, tossing the basketball lightly. "I'm Robert. Just moved in. Love the neighborhood." She nodded, her smile tight. "We do maintain a certain standard here. Your lawn, for instance, it's lush, but I noticed a dandelion by the driveway. You'll want to address that before it spreads." Her eyes drifted upward to my basketball hoop. The smile vanished. "That's new." "Yeah, put it up this morning," I said, still clueless. "Thought it'd be great for a little exercise." Recreational structures require approval from the Architectural Review Committee. Section 8, subsection C, paragraph 4. I'm sure it was an oversight. She handed me a wicker basket wrapped in cellophane, complete with a beige bow. Inside were cookies, a paint swatch card labeled approved community colors, and a copy of the HOA bylaws thicker than a dictionary. "Welcome to Willow Creek, Robert," she said, her smile colder than a winter wind. She turned and marched back to her house, leaving me with a sinking feeling that my swish had just started a war. 3 days later, the war became official. A certified letter arrived, delivered by a mailman who wouldn't meet my eyes. The envelope screamed trouble, and its contents didn't disappoint. In elegant font, the Willow Creek HOA declared my basketball hoop a visual nuisance and an unapproved structural addition. I had 14 days to remove it or face a $50 daily fine. $50 a day. My amusement turned to outrage. A visual nuisance? It was a basketball hoop, not a neon sign flashing free beer. I called my old friend Tom, a lawyer with a knack for calming my worst impulses. "They're fining me for a basketball hoop, Tom," I fumed. "A visual nuisance." He laughed so hard I thought he'd choke. "You bought a house in an HOA, Rob. Did you even read the bylaws?" I skimmed, I admitted. It was 300 pages of nonsense about mailbox height and shrub spacing. I thought it was just guidelines. Guidelines? Tom snorted. "In an HOA, those are commandments. Just take it down. These people live to measure grass blades." He was right. The smart move was to comply, to blend into the beige conformity of Willow Creek. But as I stared at that hoop, my symbol of freedom, something snapped. This wasn't just about a hoop anymore. It was about principle, about my right to live a little outside the lines. No, I said. I'm not taking it down. Oh boy, Tom groaned. That's your, I'm about to do something epically dumb voice. What's the plan? War, I said, grabbing the bylaws. A quiet, passive-aggressive suburban war. That night, I turned my dining room into a command center. The bylaws spread across the table like a battle map, highlighted and dog-eared. Fueled by coffee and spite, I searched for a loophole. The HOA's rules were a masterpiece of control. Regulations on paint sheen, garden gnome height, 18 inches max, even the acceptable angle of window blinds. But at 3:14 a.m., under the glow of a single bulb, I found it. A glorious ambiguity in Section 12, subsection F. Vertical athletic training installations were allowed, provided they didn't block public paths and were professionally installed. Better yet, Section 9 permitted artistic facade installations in approved colors. The gears in my head clicked. A vertical athletic training installation and an artistic facade, built in the HOA's sacred shades of beige and gray. They didn't want my hoop? Fine. I'd give them a masterpiece. I called Tom, waking him from a dead sleep. I found it, I whispered. The loophole. I'm building a rock-climbing wall on the side of my house. Silence. Then, you're putting a fake mountain on your house to spite Susan over a basketball hoop? It's not a fake mountain, I corrected. It's a vertical athletic training installation and a contemporary art piece called Ascent in taupe. I'm writing an artist's statement. You've lost it, Tom said, but I heard a grin in his voice. This is going to cost a fortune. Freedom isn't free, I replied. And Susan's face will be worth every penny. The next morning, I began my quest for a contractor. Most laughed me off or hung up, assuming it was a prank. But then I found Gus, of Gus's Stone and Grit Construction. His website looked like it was built in the dial-up era, but his gravelly voice on the phone was all business. I spilled the whole story. The hoop, Susan, the bylaws, my vision. I braced for rejection, but Gus just asked, which side of the house? The east side, I said. It faces Susan's living room window. A low chuckle rumbled through the line. I'll be there in an hour. Gus arrived in a truck that looked like it had survived the apocalypse. He was a weathered man in his 60s, all gristle and grit, with a toothpick permanently lodged in his mouth. He inspected the east wall of my house, kicked the foundation, and squinted at Susan's pristine beige home across the street. He grunted, jerking his thumb. Susan Harper? Drives a beige sedan with a yappy dog named Mr. Puddles. That's her, I said, stunned. She made me tear out a brick mailbox I built for a client. Gus growled. Said the mortar wasn't harmonious. Cost me 2 days' work. His eyes gleamed with shared vengeance. I'll do it, kid. We'll make it art. We shook on a price that made my bank account whimper, but the fire in Gus's eyes was worth it. Construction began at 7:01 a.m., the earliest city ordinances allowed. Gus's crew, looking like they'd wandered off a rock band's tour bus, attacked the job with glee. Power saws whined, drills thundered, and a truck dumped a pile of composite panels in tasteful shades of sandstone glow and gentle taupe. Susan appeared within minutes, clipboard in hand, her face a mask of fury. What is this? She demanded. Good morning, Susan, I chirped, clutching my own clipboard. Just installing my artistic facade, per Section 9. It's all compliant. Check the colors. That's a climbing wall, she spat. It's an interactive sculpture, I countered. It explores man's struggle against conformity. Very avant-garde. A concrete mixer roared to life, drowning her reply. I shrugged apologetically as she stormed off. The neighborhood split into factions. Team Susan, mostly older residents, muttered about property values. Team Robert grew quietly, a thumbs up from a guy fined for unapproved window trim, a nod from a family forced to dismantle their kid's treehouse. My biggest ally was Mrs. Eleanor, an 80-year-old widow who brought cookies for the crew. Susan made me remove my pink flamingos in '07, she whispered. Tacky, she called them. Give her hell, dear. The wall was finished in a week. A 25-foot-tall, 15-foot-wide beige cliff studded with colorful climbing holds, gloriously compliant with every bylaw. It was a monument to defiance, a polite middle finger in fiberglass. Gus patted it proudly. She's a beauty, kid. I had to climb it. Never mind that my exercise routine was mostly lifting pizza boxes. I rented a harness and shoes that felt like medieval torture devices. Tom came to film, grinning like a kid at a circus. "Don't die," Gus advised, leaning against his truck. I clipped in, grabbed the first holds, and hauled myself up. My arms screamed, my legs wobbled, but at 10 feet up, I glanced right and locked eyes with Susan through her living room window. Her face was a storm cloud. I gave a shaky wave. She slammed her curtains shut. I felt like a king. The police arrived 15 minutes later, called by Susan. Officer Daniels, a weary veteran, and Officer Carter, a rookie, stepped out. Susan pointed at my wall, shrieking about attractive nuisances. I handed Daniels my binder, permits, bylaws, artist statement. He flipped through it, glanced at the wall, then at Susan, who was practically vibrating. The corner of his mouth twitched. "It's a civil matter, ma'am," he said. "Paperwork's in order. No laws broken." Carter gave me a subtle thumbs up as they left. Susan was defeated for now. The next day, a cease and desist letter arrived from a law firm with a name like a cartoon villain. It claimed my wall was a liability, a violation of the neighborhood's character, and, my favorite, proof of bad faith. They threatened a lawsuit, an injunction, and a lien on my house. Panic hit hard. I called Tom, my voice shaking. "They're going to take my house." "It's a scare tactic," he said calmly. "You followed the rules. They're bluffing. There's an emergency HOA meeting Wednesday. That's your battlefield." I spent the weekend rallying neighbors, the treehouse family, the trim guy, anyone with a grudge against Susan's reign. They had stories, banned lawn gnomes, find flower pots. My wall had sparked a rebellion. Mrs. Eleanor became my secret weapon, her flamingo story uniting us all. The night before the meeting, Tom coached me through my PowerPoint. Willow Creek Liberty, a study in compliance and community. "Be calm, logical, funny," he said. "They're bored. Entertain them." The community center reeked of stale coffee. 30 homeowners sat under flickering lights, facing Susan and her board like a tribunal. Their lawyer, Mr. Grayson, looked like he charged by the syllable. Susan's speech was a masterpiece of melodrama, painting my wall as the first domino in a collapse of property values. Grayson followed with legal jargon, tortious interference, covenant violations. The room grew grim. Then it was my turn. I plugged in my laptop, and my title slide lit up the screen. A few chuckles broke the tension. "Good evening," I began. "I'm Robert, the guy with the wall. Let's talk about rules." I walked them through the bylaws, showing highlighted sections, permits, and a rock sample matching sandstone glow. "Susan says this wall isn't harmonious, but I followed the rules she wrote. It's not a nuisance. It's a solution, a conversation piece." I ended with a chart of benefits, fitness, community pride, my own happiness. A few clapped. Susan's face was granite. Then Mrs. Eleanor stood. "I have a question," she said, her voice steady. "The bylaws require 10 days' notice for special meetings. I got mine 7 days ago." The room buzzed. Grayson scrambled through his papers. Susan paled. "Any vote today would be invalid," Grayson admitted, pained. The meeting collapsed in chaos. Susan's own rules had betrayed her. I'd won, not on passion, but on a glorious technicality. The next morning, Willow Creek felt different. Neighbors waved, smiled. A pink flamingo appeared on my lawn, a nod to Mrs. Eleanor's lost birds. Susan's power was broken, her authority shattered by her own mistake. Days later, Gus stopped by with beers. "You weaponized paperwork," he said, clinking my bottle. "That's talent." Weeks later, I was climbing, badly, and planning a community barbecue to show off the wall. Kids were begging to try it. Then a new HOA letter arrived. Not a violation, but a notice of board resignations and a survey for resident input. I grinned, grabbed a pen, and wrote, "Annual Willow Creek Climbing Competition." The war was over, and we'd won, not just me, but everyone who'd ever lost a flamingo or a treehouse. Willow Creek was ours again. What do you think, folks? Was I right to fight Susan's tyranny, or did I go too far with my beige rebellion? Have you faced petty injustices in your own neighborhood? HOA battles, unfair rules, or power-hungry neighbors? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's hear your stories of standing up to unfairness or navigating the fine line between defiance and harmony. Your voice matters. Share it.